Redbridge was a postcard town, white picket fences, Sunday markets, gossip disguised as neighborly concern, but nothing, and no one, stayed hidden forever. Daniel Wexler was the town's pride, a wealthy real estate developer who donated to every school fundraiser and smiled for every camera. But one rainy evening, his housekeeper found him slumped over his desk, a bullet to the chest. A shattered glass of 18-year-old whiskey was still dripping on a Persian carpet. Detective Olivia Hart stood in the study doorway, her trained eyes scanning every detail. Nothing looked forced, no signs of a struggle, just calm and death. She turned to the officer beside her. "Who found him?" "Housekeeper. She called it in. But there was someone else on site before us. A man named Julian Cross." Time stopped. That name, Julian Cross. She hadn't heard it in 10 years. Not since the night he disappeared from her life without explanation, taking her heart, her trust, and a part of her innocence with him. She forced a breath. "Where is he now?" "In holding. Says he worked for Wexler, private security." Olivia's stomach knotted. She didn't believe in coincidences, especially not ones that came wrapped in the form of her first love and a fresh corpse. Julian sat in the interrogation room, his hands folded, his face unchanged by the years, still rugged, magnetic, and dangerous. But now, there was something else, a shadow behind his eyes. He looked up as she entered. "Olivia," he said, his voice a quiet memory echo. "Still look good in a badge." "Still look guilty in handcuffs," she shot back, masking the tremble in her chest. He smiled, tired. "I didn't kill him." She took a seat. "Then tell me what happened." Julian claimed Daniel had hired him 2 months earlier after receiving threats related to a business deal. That evening, Julian had stepped out to take a phone call. When he returned, Daniel was already dead. No forced entry, no prints, no sign of a break-in. "Convenient," Olivia said. Julian leaned in. "Liv, you know me." "I knew you," she snapped. "Before you disappeared. Before you ran after, that warehouse job went sideways, and someone ended up in a coma." He lowered his gaze. "I made mistakes, but I didn't do this." There was a pause, heavy with unfinished history. Then, Olivia stood. "Until I know more, you're the only suspect." But the facts didn't line up. Daniel's widow, Vivian Wexler, was oddly composed. She cried on cue, smiled for the press, and played the grieving wife perfectly. Too perfectly. Then Julian vanished. One day, after questioning, he was gone. No forwarding address. There was no sign of where he went or why. That's when the letters started. The first arrived on Olivia's desk, a single sheet, handwritten in ink. The wax seal was crimson, pressed with a rose. "You're looking in the wrong place. Daniel was blackmailing Vivian. There's a second safe behind the office bookshelf. You'll know when you find it. Trust me, Liv. Just this once. J." She didn't want to trust him, but something in her gut, the instinct that made her a detective, told her to check. She found a safe behind the bookshelf, concealed behind a false panel. Inside, photos, bank statements, and signed documents. Proof Daniel had been laundering money and blackmailing high-profile individuals, including his wife. Vivian's family fortune had come from embezzled charitable funds. Daniel had discovered it and used the information to control her. She'd had enough. When Olivia confronted her, the elegant facade cracked. "I just wanted him to burn the files," Vivian whispered. "He laughed at me, said I'd be nothing without him." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to pull the trigger." Vivian was arrested for manslaughter. The murder weapon was recovered from the estate's garden fountain, wrapped in silk, hidden beneath lilies. Case closed. But for Olivia, the story wasn't over. 2 weeks later, he returned. At dusk, Julian stood outside her apartment, dressed in black, holding a single red rose. She opened the door without speaking. He stepped inside. They talked until dawn. About Daniel. About the lies. About the past. About that night 10 years ago. Julian confessed he hadn't disappeared because of the failed job, but because he was protecting her. The man who ended up in a coma was tied to a gang. If Olivia had stayed with him, she would have been a target. "I left because I loved you," he said. "Not because I didn't." She didn't know whether to slap him or kiss him. So she did neither. Instead, she cried. For the years lost, for the pain unspoken, for the impossible choices they'd both made. In the morning, he was gone. No note. Just a rose on her pillow. And another letter. "You saved me, Liv, in more ways than you'll ever know. Maybe justice and love aren't meant to live in the same house. But if they ever do, I hope I find you there. Yours, always. J." Olivia kept the rose in a glass box on her bookshelf. Brittle, faded, but still beautiful. Sometimes on quiet nights she would reread the letters, each written in the same careful hand, sealed with a rose. And sometimes when the rain fell just right and the streets were still, she swore she could hear footsteps behind her. A whisper in the wind. "Liv." She never turned around, because some ghosts were better left walking beside you.